Adam Carroll comes on and the crowd goes wild. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm wonderful. How are you, Joe?
Good.
Can you?
Fantastic. So I want to welcome everybody to this live recording of a Stacky Benjamin segment. If you are not, don't know what the heck we're doing, I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, the co-host and creator of the Stacky Benjamins podcast. And what we do here on Fireside is that we have live interviews with amazing people like Adam, and this will reside later. And today you might be with us on YouTube as well. If you're with us on YouTube or here on Fireside, this will stay on YouTube. So if you have to leave early, you can go see the rest there. If you want to hear this interview, this will appear in pieces in a later part of the podcast. So we will take little snippets of it, and OG and I will chat about shredding your mortgage and about getting out of debt. So that's going to be coming up later. But the cool thing, and the reason we do this on Fireside, is because different than YouTube and different than the podcast. I mean, there's so many podcasts I listen to, guys, where I just yell at the device. I'm like, you idiot, ask them this. Well, the cool thing is, if you're with us live on Fireside, you can hit one button and you can actually ask Adam the question yourself, which I think is amazing. It's great. It's why I love this technology and why we do these here. If you're here on YouTube, Tina from our team is over there monitoring the comments. Adam and I can't see them. So if you've got a question, you're on YouTube, don't have time to download the Fireside app, feel free to just ask questions there and we will catch them. But download the Fireside app for next time, because next week, not as good as Adam Carroll on, but we are talking to an expert from Vanguard. Listen to this, Adam.
What?
An expert
What?
from Vanguard about how this inflationary environment changes the game with your investing. Like, does it change your approach, and what should you do investing wise? So that's going to be next week here on Fireside. Adam is here, and then the Vanguard guest kind of here.
I don't know how much you paid the Vanguard experts to be on your show, but it was definitely not as much as you paid me to be here.
Well, I gave them 10x what you got. Yes.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
If people can do that math on zero, that's good. All right, here we go. And in our headline today, this comes to us from USA Today. To cope with record inflation, Americans have opened up a record number of credit cards. What could possibly go wrong if you're opening up a credit card to cope with inflation? I don't think that's a sustainable strategy. And a guy I think may agree with me, we have here with us live on Fireside and on YouTube. And he is not only the guy who said the same thing when it came to the student loan crisis, like, wow, this isn't sustainable. So he made a documentary about it. He also played Monopoly with his kids for a very popular TED Talk, which also, by the way, is not sustainable. You can't continually play Monopoly for real money. Adam Carroll's here. How are you, man?
I'm wonderful, Joe. Thank you for this is a new experience for me on Fireside, but I'm excited to test this medium.
It is a great medium. I love it. And after we get done with this interview, people are going to be able to ask questions themselves. So we'll see what the stackers bring to the table. But let's start off with my questions. Clearly, this idea, Adam, of opening up new credit cards, I'm sure you agree with me, just not sustainable. You can't just open up more debt to get yourself away from inflation.
No, and it goes back to the saying that you can't solve a spending problem with more debt, right? I mean, that's the challenge. If some people are being challenged by the inflationary times we're in, and potentially an economic downturn, I understand having access to that money, but if we're using that for spending purposes, that is a ticket to Destructionville for sure.
Yeah, I do like that. When I was a financial planner, we called it kind of the top of the ice cream cone. Like the first part, the base that you had was just money in cash. And then your second tier was often money in a 1-year CD or a series of CDs. So maybe you could jack up the interest rate. That for a long time, by the way, was not a valuable strategy because CD rates got so low. Maybe it's a high yield savings account, money like that. But then the third tier was access to credit, not using it, but if everything went bad and man, I really just needed some short-term shot in the arm, I had that. You're a guy that went the opposite way though. And this is what I want to challenge everybody here on, is that as we're turning the corner into 2023, Adam, man, what if we go the other way and we just start paying down debt? When did you decide, you know what, it's time for me to shred the mortgage?
Well, this is a great question because the beginning of my mission or my initiative on becoming debt free started when I was in my early 20s. And my wife and I, Joe, realized that at some point we wanted to live on one income. But to live on one income, you had to lower your expenses to get to a point where your income superseded what your expenses were. And so we realized that the only way to do that was really to knock out our debts. And we started with the highest
Obligations.
interest
Yeah.
ones. Right, right. So we knocked out credit card debt, we knocked out car loans, we knocked out consumer debts, and all we had left was a mortgage. But in 2012, we really got intentional and started using the shred method to knock out our mortgage. And believe it or not, Joe, on not crazy income. So we were a dual income family, but we have three kids. Expenses were relatively, average, high to
We're
average,
three
I would say.
kiddish. Your
Three
expenses were three
kiddish.
kiddish.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that's right. I have three kids who have this terrible habit of eating 3 or 4 times a
It's
day,
so
no matter
annoying. Right.
no matter how I try to stop them. Um, but when in 2012, when we decided to do it, 3 years and 8 months later, we were mortgage free. So in, what was that, 36, 44 months, we had no mortgage and we had an extra 2 grand, 2,100 a month in discretionary income and all the equity sitting in our property that wasn't accruing interest, amortized interest. So when you do that, and some people will look at that and scoff and say, "Oh, it must be nice," or "I could never do that." Literally, it's not magic; it's math. The shred method just uses mathematical principles to teach you how to do it.
Well, before we get to that, I want to talk though first about just this concept in general, because as you know, there are professors out there. I often jokingly call them broke professors because they're people that know everything and haven't done anything, that always seem to point this stuff out to me. But
Yes.
there are people that will say, "Hey, mortgage, Adam, low interest debt. Sure, for most of us, it's not deductible anymore, but it is. To your point, it was the last thing you paid off.
Yeah.
Why would I pay off my mortgage when I can probably beat it long term with a good investment strategy?"
Yeah. It's a great question. And I would retort that question back with one saying, "What would it feel like emotionally for people to not have a mortgage?" And so this is really the heart of the issue for me when I talk to people about why you would do it. It's not about beating the S&P or, should I put this in mutual funds over the long term and won't it outperform? It's about an emotional tie to how you'd feel around money. And very candidly, Joe, I've met people in their late 60s, early 70s, even 80s that will say, "I'm going to have to go back and get a job. I'm going to have to go drive for Uber. I'm going to have to greet at Walmart," or whatever they end up doing. And the reason they're doing it is because they didn't save enough or their expenses are too high relative to their income. And so when you look ahead 10, 15, 20 years, maybe 5 years even, what does that look like for you? And if you want to be certain about the security and safety of your retirement, this is an emotional question, not a logical, oh, you can make more,
Yeah.
by putting that money away. Um, that's one half of the equation, and then the other half is I had it in my head that if I knocked out my mortgage right away, and on my $300,000 home, I might end up paying 500 right over the course of 30 years, even at a low interest rate. What would I do with an extra $200,000 in interest? And how would that compound over time? And you realize that it compounds really quickly when you can write big checks after your mortgage is done, because we're talking about writing 25, 50, $100,000 checks into investments. You'd be hard pressed to do that if you were still paying a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 mortgage, and all the interest that accrues with that.
It's funny as you're talking, I'm thinking the quote pitch that I use to sell myself on this,
Yeah.
on paying down my debt versus investing, is just made me think back to when I was a financial planner. And it was, listen, if we can do the secure thing, let's do that. Because if we can get
Yeah.
away with paying off the mortgage and we can do that, and we don't have to be this professor who's looking at the arbitrage between this low interest rate and this high one, and I'm bringing that in. Like if I can
Yes.
just stupid simplify it and get where I want to go, let's make it simpler. Because study after
Yeah.
study shows, well, Wes Moss has this great book, What the Richest or Happiest Retirees Know, that says the happiest retirees, many of them who are uber wealthy, these people pay off their debt, even though I'm sure they're
Yeah.
smart enough, Adam. I mean, these people don't become bajillionaires without knowing a few things. They
Yep.
know that the math is suboptimal. So it's not about
Right.
optimization. It's about being happier and freedom from worry and being able to focus on other things.
I
I
think you
think,
nailed it on freedom from worry too, Joe. Because if you think about, people looking ahead even at the next 24 months, if the market truly goes sideways for 24 months, do the calculations that people run where it's like, well, you just need to make 8% per year for the next 20 years and you'll be fine. What
right.
about the years where the market goes down by 10% or 20 or 30%? Um, and that creates a lot of worry and concern and anxiety for people. And my wife and I, we look ahead and we go, we'll be fine, no matter what. It doesn't matter. The expenses are so low, and everything's taken care of, and there's cash flow coming in from other investments. When you get to a point where money it can be irrelevant to a certain extent, and the worry isn't there, what would that be worth? That for me is ultimately the question.
And you're focusing now 100% on opportunities because, listen, I can just go for it. I can take some more risk, frankly, because you're taking less risk with your debt, and you don't need to ensure that the mortgage payment is going to be made tomorrow because there is
That's
none.
right. That's right.
Yes. And
Yep.
then you get those damn kids out of the house, and life is great.
Oh my God, Joe, I'm telling you, I'm 3 years, 3.5 years away from empty nest syndrome, and I cannot wait. My wife, it'll be like, what was the uh, what was the show where they were rolling around on $1 million, Indecent Proposal or whatever it was? It'll be like that, just every weekend, you know, money bath. That's what it's gonna
I
be like.
just, I just, I don't want to see that video. This sounds like a creepy OnlyFans kind of thing. I don't want anything to do with that. Hey,
Oh,
but I will say this about that. My son, when he went to college, when he went to the University of Texas, they have in the dorms, this program, and it's kind of all you can eat, right? You get a ticket and then just go to all the stations and grab whatever you want. And it was
it's
funny.
awesome.
Dude, at what they charged, and my son, not a big kid, and definitely in shape, and you would never know about this, but he was captain of the swim team, and this kid could eat and just eat and eat. And when I saw what the University of Texas was going to charge us, like they lost huge on that deal. I was like, I don't know if you remember that comedian John Panette when he would talk about the buffet. They'd see him coming up to the buffet. Of course, John Panette was a huge guy coming up to the buffet, and they're like, "No, we're closed. We're closed." That was my son going to UT. If you
What
find out that there were any debt problems from UT, it probably originated with my kid going there.
was
Like
it?
that.
Was that comedian the one where he said if you went into an Asian all you can eat buffet and it was you eat everything, you drink all American Pepsi? That guy.
Yes, yes, yes. He's like, you eat everything except you. Yes, yeah, not great.
Uh,
Let's get back on track. People are wondering what the hell we're talking about. But so let's go over the things that people miss, because obviously
yeah,
if I make the decision to pay my mortgage off and I
yeah,
want to pay it off quickly, well then duh, I put extra money on my payment, right?
yeah, yeah.
But let's start off with this. Early payments in a mortgage, not the same as late payments. Let's talk about that. The difference in making earlier payments versus late year payments.
Yes, yeah. So early year payments, and by that you mean like getting someone making a payment early in the mortgage as opposed to later in the
Yes,
mortgage.
yes,
Yes.
yeah. So year one, year two, year three versus year 18 of a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah. So the key here is, when people look at their mortgage, what they're looking at, Joe, is the interest rate. And so they go, oh, it's 2.5 or 3% or 3.5% or now 7.5%. And so when we are in a mortgage at, as of a year ago, let's say it was 3.5%, people go, that's the cheapest money you'll ever get. But if your mortgage balance is 600,000, it's still a lot of money that you're paying every single year in interest, right? So the interest rate is important, but the balance is even more important. So the early in the mortgage payments are critical because what we're doing is we're accelerating the amortization table of the mortgage. And when I say that, what I mean is, let's say you've recently acquired a mortgage and you're at payment 8, but you drop a $5,000 time one-time $5,000 lump sum payment in. What happens is you're accelerating from payment 8 to maybe payment 21, and you're skipping there by 13 payments of interest and principal, but the interest really is where you're saving. So the amortization table is the pages of the mortgage that most people just skip over. It's like, I know I'm going to be paying, I don't really even pay attention to it. But when you really dig into that, that is the indicator of how much interest that thing is actually costing you on an annual basis. And we tend to like write off the interest expense because we go, oh, I'm going to write it off on my taxes anyway. But the reality is that in 2017, when the tax code changed, a standard deduction gets you, I think it's like 26,000, isn't it? 25, 26,000 for a couple,
And regardless of your mortgage now.
regardless of your mortgage. So the excuse of, well, I get to write off my mortgage interest, who cares? You can anyway with the standard deduction. So now we strip away that excuse and we just are going to go in and figure out how to massively save on our mortgage interest. And we do it by accelerating the amortization table.
I love this idea. I think this was a big aha for me. I remember when I started as a financial planner and just examining all this stuff, the fact that if I have a loan, even if it's at a great interest rate, like, some of these people that got 3.5%, 4%, right? I mean, how great do those look today?
Yes.
And I remember then some people even coming to me then going, 4%. I don't know if I want to do that. That seems high. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is amazing.
Yes.
But even if you've got 4%, year number one is not 4%. In an amortization table, it's like 90.
That's right.
And if you can pay in year number one and get rid of that. Now, and this is a key too. If you're going to, we actually had this question, Adam, in the basement. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on this. You need to make sure that this is additional payment, not a regular payment. If it's a regular payment, what happens is the bank goes, and if you don't specify what the bank is going to do, they're going to go, oh, you prepaid January, or you prepaid February, you prepaid March, and they're going to continue that amortization table because it makes them more money. You need to make sure this is an additional payment. Like this is huge.
Principal only. Yep. That's what we tell people is it is a principal only payment. And here's the kicker, Joe. There are mortgage servicers out there that in their software, on their website, when you go in to make a payment, they will hide principal only payment options somewhere on the site so you can't readily access it. Now, with our provider, we had to actually call them at first and say, this is additional principal. This is not lump sum future payments. That does us no good, like you said. So the way to note if your payments are being applied correctly is when you look at your statement, if the next due date is next month, then you're good. But if the next due date is 2 or 3 or 4 months from now, then the bank, the lender, has literally taken your payments and said, hey, thanks. Now you don't owe us a payment for 2 or 3 or 4 months, which is not what we want to do because they're just making money on your money at that point. Right. So we want to make sure it's in our benefit, which is apply those lump sum payments to principal only.
We had a stacker that accidentally made that mistake, we had a stacker that did not know the difference between those two things. And so what he decided to do, encouraged by our community, was the next few months, while he doesn't have a payment, he's going to make those quote regular payments, but put principal only on those. Not as effective, but if you're in that situation, I think that's a great way to go. Hey, you though get a lot more technical about this. So you decided, and everybody who's been with us for a while knows how much I love fintech. You created a fintech thing. Well, you're behind. You didn't create this. You're behind this fintech technology that really gets precise on this. So let's talk about the shred method and how this thing works. Because this takes all these little things we're beginning to talk about and goes into hyperdrive.
Totally. So the way I like to describe this, Joe, is the shred method is really the mindset behind making your income as efficient as humanly possible. And that involves, making these lump sum payments and reorienting how the cash flow rolls through your personal economy, which I'll talk about in a sec. The shred method software that powers this is literally a complex series of algorithms that calculate to the penny how much you would be sending of your income in lump sum payments to the mortgage or other debts to knock them out. And the benefit of this is twofold. Number one, you get to see in real time how much you're saving on a week by week, month by month basis. So if you drop, as I mentioned before, $5,000 as a one time lump sum payment, the system will say, hey, in that one time lump sum payment, 5 grand, you actually saved $17,832 in interest. So people see that and they're like, oh my God, how have I not been doing this before? Right. Secondly, it guides you step by step, day by day, week by week on how much you're sending, with the intent being we just want to change behavior. And the way I like to describe that is the banking institutions have taught us how to operate, which is we borrow money, they tell us how much to pay, when to pay it, and we dutifully do that. But we never really question, is this the most effective use of our money for us? Not for the bank, but for us. And when you use the shred method, and particularly the software, it's like for every one step you take, it's like taking three or four, because we're literally teaching how to make your income more and more efficient. So not only do you see the progress, it begins to retrain your steps or your mindset around how your money is used. And the results speak for themselves. I mean, we have shredders that achieve personal financial freedom within a couple of years in some cases when they really get this.
Oh, that is super powerful. And a lot of this, I know part of this is just based on stuff that you don't want to track yourself. I mean, don't get me wrong, at the beginning of the process, you go through exactly what you need to know. And
Yep.
there is a whole core. This is not just swipe a credit card to buy the tool and man, you're good. This is
Yep.
something where there is a little work, but think about the outcome, the extra outcome. You could have
Yep.
all your debt go to zero much faster than you could on your own. But a big key here is around dates, is
Yep.
around send this amount on this date, this amount on this date, this amount on this date. What am I sharing
Totally.
with the program, Adam, to get these dates down?
Yeah, great question. So, when we plug all the data in, and we have a team that works with all of our shredders to optimize the account for them based on their income and their expenses. But we plug in your income dates. So we'll have exact net numbers and the dates of when that drops. We'll have expenses, which we can get as granular as you want in the system. So if you want to go in and say, my water bill hits on the third and my cell phone bill hits on this date, we can go to that level of granularity. For many of us, with our shredders, we generally say around how much are you spending, because we can go in and the system is very fluid. So if you say there's 2,500 a month in expenses, but this month it happened to be 3,300, we can go in and tweak that number at a high level, and the system will recalculate everything for you to tell you, how much to send. But we're looking at when does income hit, when do expenses hit, when does the mortgage hit. If we're using a credit card to pay expenses, we can even plug in what is the grace period on that credit card. So if it's 15 days or 45 days, we're going to take some advantage of the fact that you can carry a balance for a period of time before we have to knock that balance out. But know this, Joe, and this is an integral part of this: the credit card is paid off every single month, no matter what. So we never carry a credit card balance. Certainly, some people come in and they have a fairly high credit card balance. We get that knocked out in record time. But then, if you're still using it, it's knocked out every single month. There is no debt, no balance carried on a credit card.
Yeah. So if you're playing the reward point program, which I would question why you're doing that if you have credit card debt, but if you're playing the reward point program, you can continue doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I mean, candidly, that's one of the modules in our course is how do you travel for free? And my family and I just took advantage of this. We're traveling to Italy this summer, and for four of us, to go round trip. And my son's going, he's in a high school choir and they're singing in like 6 different churches across Italy. So we're going and just tagging along. But for 4 of us to fly, using miles and points and all of that, it was under $2,000. And today, I mean, it's kind of crazy. You could do
I must
that.
have. I'm just wondering, Adam. I must have missed the invitation. I'll go back and check my email, but I don't know what happened.
We'll meet you in Florence, Joe. How about that?
that's a deal. Well, I'm doing the same thing. We are actually, it's funny, Cheryl and I are flying to visit our daughter Autumn, and we're in late December going to do the Christmas markets cruise up the Danube. So we start in Budapest and end up, Vienna in December at Christmas markets. Doesn't that suck? It's just, and that's points, and it is points, but
amazing.
Yeah. Good stuff as long as you're not carrying debt. So if you're focused on not carrying debt, I think that's fantastic. All right. I'm going to give everybody the URL. This is, everybody knows that we talk fintech all the time on Stacky Benjamins. I don't partner with hardly any of the fintech that we talk about on the show. And frankly, a lot of the time I'm learning about it at the same time that you are, but I like this enough. And I think it's important enough for us to pay out a debt. And it's so dovetails so much into the Stacky Benjamins method that Adam's been nice enough to let us partner with him. So if you use our link, then this will do 2 things. Number 1, it'll give you a discount. And number 2 is you will also then be helping out the show. So stackybenjamins.com/shred is the place to go to the link. stackybenjamins.com/shred to use Adam's shred method gets you there. We have, the reason I love this platform is that you can ask your own questions. So if you're on Fireside now and you've got your questions for Adam, we've got him here. Ask any question I didn't ask, anything appropriate for your situation, whatever it is. If you're on YouTube and you've joined us since we started and are hanging out with us, just put it in the chat. Tina's over there. She's monitoring all the questions. And I've got Slack open here and Tina will let me know. But Karen, our producer, Adam, has the first question. And this is a big one for any fintech that you use. And probably the first question we should always ask, you're collecting what I will describe as a ton of data on people. What's the security to keep my information safe?
Well, this is such a great question because there are obviously fintechs out there that are going deep into your account information. I mean, when we're talking about aggregators, whether there's a Plaid integration or something like that, they're pulling all sorts of metadata. For us, it's high level. I mean, literally, you could not include anything that's highly personal, with the exception of your income, which for some that may be what you want to share, and it may not be what you want to share. But we're literally asking for net numbers and then a mortgage balance and interest rate and other debts. So if you have a car loan or you have a credit card debt, we obviously know what the balance is and what the interest rate is. Beyond that, the level of personal information that we take is very, very small. So I have it, and my context around the shred method is that we don't necessarily need deep fundamental information about you, which means there is still a high level of security, but not nearly the level of security that is required if we're going into social security numbers, addresses, all those kinds of things, because we don't need it. You could put dummy information in the system and we'd never know who you are technically to be able to go out and find it. If you wanted to put JSS1011 at Gmail, Joe, that would be fine. We don't really care because we don't need to know that. It literally is
I think it would be like Hotman TXK.
Who's your daddy? 1975 at Gmail.
I heard about, and this is absolutely horrible. But even before I tell everybody this is horrible. But I was at a function a couple of nights ago. A friend of mine had a birthday, and his son, who is a young lawyer, was talking about his days playing Xbox, right? And everybody has their Xbox name. And this friend of his, whose last name was Turner, his Xbox name was Turner Over, which was just not good. Just like, and we're like, how, why? And by the way, the guy that did that, it was just, and we have had HR people on, by the way. That's a, do not use that email address,
Right,
like your
right.
funny email address. Scrub your social media that has all these weird
Totally.
names.
You know that guy
Just
applied for a job with an AOL address, that as his AOL address, right? He applied for his first job.
yes, and they're like, nope, this is an HR problem waiting to happen. Yeah, not good.
So yeah, data related question. We're very secure, right? It's a secured site, SSL certificates galore and all that. But we don't ask for super detailed raw information that could be used to sell to anyone.
Let's see if I have any other questions here. I do not have questions here. I've got one more question. Well, while we're waiting to see if anybody has a last question for us, um, I've got one. So people went to the link, stackybenjamins.com/red. What they saw, Adam, was the first thing I saw when I went there before I really knew how this worked. And it is not inexpensive. This is not like, hey, a $10 thing and man, you get the app and the whatever, and we're gonna throw in some
Yeah.
steak knives. This is not inexpensive. But
Yep.
but let's talk about that for a second, about
Yep.
the fee and why it costs what it costs to join this program.
Yep. So this is what we liken it to, Joe. It's a course, right? So there's a course that is included with the program, and the course teaches you everything you need to know, soup to nuts, on how to do this thing. The software itself is a subscription model, and we offer the subscription as a benefit, or we call it a behavior modification tool. So it's like, why would you hire a personal trainer? You're going to show up at the gym when you're paying them to show up to show up with you and do the workouts. The software functions very much the same. From an investment perspective, this is how I want to create context around this. If somebody's got $100,000 with their financial advisor and they're charged 1%, it would cost them $1,000 a year to have that advisor manage their $100,000, right? And we're talking about speculative returns with an advisor. They hope to make you 6 to 8%, but there's a likelihood at the end of the year you may be at 90,000 on your asset, which means they make 900 the next year. And we're talking about guaranteed returns when you're blasting away debt, because paying off debt is a guaranteed return. So when people look at the number and there may be a little sticker shock to it, what I like to tell folks is, what is it worth if I can show you in the first 6 months how you might be able to save 50, 60, $70,000 in interest? Is it worth $1,000? And in most of cases, when we're working with an affiliate or a partner like we are with Stacking Benjamins, there's a discount even that brings that down a bit. This is the power of this: is we're showing people how to save real money. The majority of our shredders are saving tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of their mortgage, and then turning around and pumping them into investments that allow them to retire with double digit seven-figure retirement balances. So yeah, we believe it's worth it.
Well, let me give you my answer about why we would partner when it is not inexpensive. And my answer always is, my goal when I do anything is not about the price, it's about the value. And so people that have been with us for a long time know that I partner with MetPro, which is not the cheapest way to do behavior modification when it comes to fitness, weight, performance, that stuff. When it comes to your health related stuff, it is a coach who's there all the time. And guess what? Jessie kicks my ass and I hate her and I love her at the same time, which is why I've had Jessie in my corner for a long time. And I always am able to show up and I have energy, and it's all because of MetPro. If I used an app that I paid for one time. I know me, and I know I would not stick to it. So I love your description of a behavior modification tool. I'm not looking for a cheap and easy way to start getting out of debt, because this is what I used to see, Adam, when I was a financial planner. I'd see people pay down their debt, get back in debt, pay out their debt, get back in debt, pay off their debt, get back in debt, pay off their, and it was just these shark teeth for years.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting them when they're 50. And they've been trying to do this since they were like 28, and they haven't been able to do it.
Yes.
So let's flip the switch, get this crap done. Excuse my language, because, well, I already used the turner over joke. So nobody, I don't think anybody buys my language at this point. If they do, they've already turned off, but let's flip that switch. Let's get on to the big stuff. Right. And we get this out of the way. We can now focus on making more money, which is something people don't think enough about. We can focus on our dreams and more time with our family. We can think about all this other stuff. And that, for me, is why we decided, out of all the get out of debt methods out there, this was the one for us. So
I love it, Joe. The partnership means a lot to us too, because of the fact that Stacking Benjamins has been around for so long. You and OG provide such great value and content for people. But really, it's if folks have been with you since the beginning, they have probably experienced their own behavior shift over time, one would hope. Maybe they're just playing more board games. I don't know. But I would guess that they're saving more, they're investing more, they're changing their behavior. That ultimately is what we're about, is helping our shredders, our community. And it really is a community, a tribe of people who are beginning to think differently about A, how money is used in their life, but B, how much of what they make they get to keep. And this again is paramount to understanding this model, is that there is something that we call an interest to income ratio. And the interest to income ratio is when you look at how much money you make comparative to how much interest you're spending on a monthly or annual basis. We had a client the other day that had about $120,000 in income, but they were paying upwards of $40,000 in interest between their mortgage, their car payment, and their credit card debt. And when you're at that level, you're 30% taxes minimum. You're paying 40 grand a year in interest. You're not living on as much as you think you are. And so what our goal is to help people keep more of the money they make, and to lower the interest to income ratio, where you're paying less interest relative to the amount of income that you make.
It's stackingbenjamins.com/shred. I think we must have nailed it, because we've got people here with us, and I think nobody has any more questions. But dude, thank you so much for being such a great resource. I'm glad you held back when you said we've been doing this for so long. I'm glad you held back on the old guy joke. That was good. Thank you for not doing that. So,
hey man, age is but a number, and you and I have long since forgotten about counting age. So
we don't talk about age, and we don't talk about hair follicles.
That's right. I do have to tell all your listeners here. Hang on a second. Okay, so let's do a side by side. I've been at many events, and people will come up to me and they're like, "Are you Joe Salci?" And I'll say, thank you, but no, I am not. And I hope you've gotten, "Are you Adam Carroll?" from time to time. But
yes,
I always take it as a compliment.
It's like you, me, and comedian Paul Ollinger, who have chatted together. Like, we got the same sexiness going on up here, big guy. Yeah,
it is, man.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging.
Somewhere there's a fan club for guys that look like us, Joe. I swear.
Thanks for hanging out with us today, everybody. If you've got questions later for us and you want to put those in the comments, feel free. We will be happy, if you're on YouTube, to answer those later as we come around. Next week, by the way, we and the 201, our free newsletter where we go into deeper dives, we'll give you dates and times on the show. In our basement Facebook group, we will have dates and times, but one you want to make sure that you catch next week. We're with Vanguard, talking about, with inflation through the roof, does this change the game with your investing style? So he's Adam, I'm Joe. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.